Let's talk about fantasy basketball awards. We did the real awards yesterday. Now it's the fantasy awards. Michael Bolton, do you win the award as my fantasy?
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NBA fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd, and I don't know why Batman doesn't dance anymore. I'm also the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Thank you also for making Locked On Fantasy Basketball your first listen every day. We are free. We are available on all platforms. LockedOnDaily.com. There are free NBA newsletters for your favorite team, and we've got prizes. Up until the end of April, if you sign up for the free newsletter, which is delivered into your inbox, there are gift cards aplenty. A $2,500 Best Buy gift card. We've got gift cards for Game Time and for Fanatics as well. So sign up for free over there. Sign up over here, it's free. You subscribe, you double bang, all that sort of stuff. Yesterday, like I said, we did NBA awards, my MVP picks, my most improved player picks, my All-NBA play, all the awards, apart from Clutch Player of the Year or Executive of the Year, which is obviously Rob Pelinka, which is an amazing thing to say. That show is done. Now we're going to do fantasy awards. We're going to do more specific busts and sleeper shows and reviews of picks and all that sort of stuff coming up. But today we're just going to give out 7 individual awards. I'll give some explanations on them as we go through this. Yesterday we had the first of the play-in games. Orlando ended up cooking Atlanta, so they are through. And they get to take on Boston, which I think they'll get swept. And then we had Golden State beating Memphis with some interesting stuff in that game. And now Golden State takes on Houston. And I think Houston, that's the one of those I predicted in my playoff prediction episode. So you can see my thoughts on that already. I think Houston wins that series relatively comfortably. But, you know, it's Steph, man. It's Draymond. Jimmy Butler's there. We'll see exactly how that all goes down. But I do think Houston will win that. Let's go in here today on World Hemophilia Day. It is the fantasy awards for us to talk about. So let's talk about these awards, the exact way that we're going to do them. Well, might as well just talk about that now because it's time for me to tell you who I have as the fantasy MVP. I'm going to give you for each of these awards 3 names listed in alphabetical order. The exact criteria I use, I've got some formulaic stuff that I've got in the background here. I guess if you're really, really interested in that, I can share out with you at some point. But fantasy MVP, we're going to talk category leagues. And we're going to talk points leagues, and I'm going to sort of push it together to give you that overall winner. In the end, it doesn't really matter that much, to be honest. You could make an argument, go, Shea was the number 1 ranked player in 9-cat totals and this and this and this, whatever, right? The 3 players I've got there are Giannis, Shea, and Big Chungus, Nikola Jokic. One man finished number 1 in points leagues. One man finished number 2 in category leagues, depending again on how you want to view that. And that one man, of course, is Big Chungus. It is Nikola Jokic, who was the number 1, or to me, he is the fantasy MVP just based on who was the best fantasy performer. And yes, I know that during the fantasy playoffs, he missed games. That happens. That's just things that go down. He had an ADP of 2.2. Wembanyama's was like 1.9, and obviously Wemby was he was in that top 3 before he got hurt as well. Jokic's fantasy points numbers were so far ahead of everybody else's. So if you're in a points league, it was very clearly Jokic. He had 64 fantasy points. He played an astonishing 37 minutes a game, which honestly, when I did projections at the start of the season, I never had him anywhere near that. That is why when I was doing my thing and had my projections and was talking about who goes number 1, I said I would probably lean Victor as a 60-40. Like 3 out of every 5, I would take Victor over Jokic. Because I thought that Jokic at some point would probably... there would be some injury risk at some point. You can't ever rule that out. And it did happen. It obviously happened for Wemby as well. Different scenario, clearly. But I would take Wemby 3 and Jokic 2 times there. But I never for a million years expected that Jokic was playing 37 minutes a night. Never once did that cross my mind that he would get there. And then he also became a 42% three-point shooter. And he averaged a triple-double. Nothing that I saw coming at all. You heard my MVP talks for real MVP yesterday. It was Jokic. Not that there's anything wrong with picking Shea. I can totally understand that. But my fantasy MVP is going to go to Big Chungus, Nikola Jokic, which, again, I think is a relatively decent and fair pick. Again, Giannis or Shea is there. Why is Giannis there? Well, he was number 2 in points leagues, and if you correctly view category leagues and their rankings, he was like, I think, 5 or 6 in category league rankings. Not 30th, not 80th, not 90th, not whatever other nonsense you want to go through. There's more on that coming later. Let's go into the second category that we're going to get to for today, and that is the waiver wire MVP. Now, I know that one of you will say, well, this is Josh Hart, or this is Dyson Daniels. It's not. Sorry to tell you, it's not. And the reason why it's not is for this very simple fact. On Yahoo, when you go and have a look at ADPs and data and that sort of stuff, it tells you what percentage of leagues that a player was drafted. And for me, a waiver wire player like Dyson Daniels was 36% drafted. But if you were paying attention in fantasy, if you watched this show or many other shows, people were drafting Dyson Daniels in every draft. The 36% is true that is how many he was drafted in Yahoo, but it also gives us an indication of how many leagues that just weren't paying attention in the preseason or the off-season. He should have been picked in every league, so to me, he's not a waiver wire pickup. And I know there's going to be those of you watching this who go, well, I picked him off the waiver wire. Great, well done to you. You did a fantastic move by picking up a player like Dyson Daniels. But these three guys, Santi Aldama, Christian Braun, and Tamani Kamara, were all drafted in under 10% of leagues. And that's the cutoff I use. Kamara actually 0% of leagues. Brown was 8 and Aldama was 5. So, the winner there, I was very skeptical of this guy, and he proved me very, very wrong all season. It is Christian Braun, because he was able to maintain top 100 numbers all through the season by just being incredibly efficient. He was a guy last year that there was quite a few people who were expecting him to take a big step forward with Bruce Brown gone, and it never happened. He was actually quite bad for most of last season. But he played 34 minutes a game. He did this with under 16 usage as well. And that's where I got a little bit of skepticism from it. It's like, okay, is he really going to be this good? Well, yeah. His defensive numbers, which were sky high at the start of the year, they did come down. So I was correct on that part. But I didn't think that he'd be a 58% shooter from the field, nor would he be a 40% three-point shooter, nor would he be a 83% free throw guy necessarily. And that's really where a lot of his value comes from. Like 1 steal, 1 3, like whatever. That's why in points leagues, he's 106th, averaging 29 points. But category leagues, he was inside the top 100. He was drafted in 8% of leagues. I had him outside the top 200 for the season. I just didn't see it. No reason for me to have thought he'd become this efficient. He was. He proved me wrong. Well done, Christian Braun. You are the waiver wire MVP for the season. This next one is, again, a different sort of way to look at the categories. And what I wanted to do with this one is talk about who from my preseason projections was the biggest riser. Now, most of this stuff, when I go through it, there is a level of weighting done on it based on, like, if you rise from 500th to 300th, well done, you rose 200 spots. But if I had you 50th at the beginning of the season, well, there is zero shot that you're able to rise 200 spots, because then you become the minus 150th. It's impossible, right? So there's got to be a weighting that the higher up you are, the less you have to rise to be as equivalent to someone who goes from 500 to 300. That, I'm sure, makes sense to all of you, because you're all very, very smart people. So the three players using my formula there that outstripped my per-game fantasy preseason projections: John Collins, Dyson Daniels, and Austin Reeves. I was not big on John Collins heading into the season. Again, that was one of those ones where he was coming off the bench behind Walker Kessler and Taylor Hendricks. Then Hendricks broke his leg 4 games into the season or whatever it was. Collins started, he was back and forth, and the end of the season was a joke, as pretty clearly it was. But he's still way better than I thought. Dyson Daniels, like I just said, like, you could have had him in that waiver wire pickup, but he should have been drafted in every league. But even so, saying we should have drafted him or saying we were interested in what he was doing, he was way better than that. And the other one was Austin Reeves, who had some interesting stuff. Like, I thought he'd be interesting at the start of the year. Was benched behind D'Angelo Russell, took over from D'Angelo Russell. I thought he'd take another dip when Doncic arrived. That didn't happen. He got better. And he was one from my preseason projections that took one of the biggest jumps as well. But in the end, if I had a drum roll, I'd play it. The biggest riser, it's got to be the big fella. It's got to be the dustbuster himself. It's Dyson Daniels. Because I thought that he'd be like 110th maybe, around 100. I thought he would start. I thought he might play 30 minutes or 29 minutes, 31 minutes. And Bogdanovic would get playing time, but I didn't expect that we'd be getting 34 minutes a night out of Dyson. I didn't think he'd be a top 50 player for categories and points. I didn't think, of course I didn't, because I'd be an idiot if I thought this. And if anyone ever comes to you and said that, yeah, I projected 3 steals a game, they're lying. Like, simple as that. Their entire process is incorrect. It's very hard to come out and say, hey, I'm going to project something that hasn't happened for 40 years and it's this guy that's never shown it before. Like, that's idiocy. But he did it, right? He got 3 steals a game. At the end of the season, his assists and usage all rose. Also remembering, Jalen Johnson was out. So we've got to be cautious of that. And he is going to be a massive risk, Dyson, of being overdrafted. Don't fall into the trap. Don't fall into the trap. Look, oh, man, he was so good for me. I picked him. He won me in my league. Oh, he's a must draft for me. No, absolutely not. Because that value of 100 spots from where you picked him has gone. Now he's going to go in round 3, and he probably should go in round 4. So if you pick him in round 3 just because he was good last year, it's ridiculous, and it's not the way you have any success. Don't do it. You want to attack the guys that are in the right spot based on value, and that changes every single season. That is not about targeting that same guy again. And I hope that all makes a decent amount of sense. It should, because today's episode is brought to you by Skims, and the only way that I know how to make sense is when I'm feeling supported and comfortable downstairs. And that's what Skims does. You may have seen Skims for women. They've been around for ages. You might have worn some. Good for you. We all love comfortableness in our underwear zone. The old UZ. Skims for men is now a thing that exists. Whatever sort of cut you like. Boxers. Loosey-gooseys. That's not the real name. Boxer briefs. High-cut briefs. Who am I to judge? Maybe there's a G-banger or two in there. That is completely up to you as well. But Skims for men is going to hit the brief of being comfortable, of being stylish, of having many options, many sizes, many lengths, many colors, all that stuff. And again, the number one thing you want to feel comfortable. So when you're looking out for Big Josh and Little Josh, go to Skims. In fact, you can go right now to Skims Men's, shop Skims Men's at skims.com/LockedOnNBA or at Skims stores and let them know that we sent you. After you place your order, you select podcast in the survey and select our show in the drop-down menu that follows. Today's episode is also brought to you by the Game Time app. When you want to go to events, sporting events, comedy, theater, whatever it is, Game Time is going to get you those tickets. You don't want that stress of buying the tickets and going, oh, how much is it going to cost? So what am I going to do? I just want to go and see something fun. Well, that's where Game Time comes in. The NBA playoffs, the Major League Baseball season, it is all there. And the prices on the Game Time app actually go down as tip-off gets closer. And their last-minute deals can save you up to 60%. Those last-minute deals are fantastic. You might be sitting around going, hey, guys, what are we up to today? We're going to go see a bit of musicals, bit of sports from the local team, the match winners. We could do all that. That's how people speak, I've been told. And you can get those tickets on Game Time and save that money. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create the account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets. Lowest price guaranteed. All right, we're back. We're rolling. We're ready to talk more fantasy award winners for the 24-25 NBA season. So our last award was the biggest riser of the season. This one is going to be the biggest bust. Shout out to Skims once more. Who are the guys from my preseason projections that didn't live up to them? Based on what I thought they would do versus where they ended up. And you look at those names and go, of course. But I'm not even talking about games played. I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about just what did you do when you were out there? So the 3 names here are Joel Embiid, Kyle Kuzma, and Lauri Markkanen. Now, again, this is based on my preseason projections. Now, 2 of these guys, I very much said, do not draft these players. Do not touch Joel Embiid in round 1. Do not draft Lauri Markkanen in the first 4 rounds or top 5. I said in Roto, maybe you can do it. In head-to-head, do not touch him in those zones because of what I knew was the problem with Embiid's knee and what I knew was the angle that the Jazz were going to be taking this season. They were going hard into a tank, and I was very much avoid. But my per-game projections of them were still pretty solid. And they still couldn't hit those numbers. As for Kuzma, I don't know what happened to him. Too many long sleeves? Too many pink turtlenecks? I'm not sure. He was just dreadful. Now, he's always been dreadful, but the season before for Washington, he's actually putting up good numbers. That just, disappeared. Straight in the dunny. Done. Gone. But who was the bust of the year? It has to be. It has to be Joel Embiid, doesn't it? Because again, not only did he play 19 games, not only was he not ready to start the season, not only was there the coming and going and the limited minutes and you're in, you're out and another surgery, but when he played, he was bad. Like, he only was the 17th best player per game, which, for a guy that was number 1 per game the year before, and again, this is all got to be weighted, it's terrible. He averaged under 24 points. He shot under 30% from three. The big fella didn't even block one shot per game. Yeah, he saw 8 rebounds, he had 4.5 assists, and you could say that Markkanen's fall was bigger, I get it. You could say that Kuzma's drop-off was way worse. I also understand that. But given where you invested, or what I actually projected, I projected Embiid per game, I still thought he'd play 32 minutes a night and be a top 5 per game guy. But nah. So when you're projecting a guy top 3 and they're not top 15, that's a kick in the dick. And maybe that's what the award should be named. Probably not. I'm sure that the printers, or what are they called, the metal etching artisanal legends that create those nameplates on trophies wouldn't want to put that out. Maybe they would for the right amount of money. Who knows? But this isn't a real award, so it doesn't really matter in the end. Let's get into the next award that we're talking about. And this is one that's going to get people annoyed. And that's okay, because that's part of what we're here to do. These are the 9-cat frauds. So what do I mean by that? When you go and look at rankings, and when you go to Yahoo, or you see people spouting numbers and they go, well, actually, by the 9-cat totals, this guy was here and he was a first-round player. And we know that that is just not how anything resembles reality. It's just not a thing that matters. It's not a thing that has any forward projecting value. You can tell me that you think Dyson Daniels was a first-round player. I'll tell you you were wrong. You can tell me that Josh Hart was that as well. You can tell me that Ivica Zubac was a first-round player. Again, I will also be very happy to tell you that you were wrong. But people will have those thoughts. They will have those ideas. People will think that, and that will then influence some decision-making. Right. So when we look at that, like Dyson Daniels was the 7th-ranked player by Yahoo totals. Again, crazy. Ivica Zubac was 9th. Come on, man. Josh Hart, 11th. What are we doing? They're not the guys that make my top 3 for this list. Well, actually, that's not true, because one of them is. The 3 that I have is 9-cat frauds, and they're not frauds. They're very good players. And one of them, Ivica Zubac, was the guy that I targeted in nearly every draft because I was like, Ty Lue has to play him more minutes. And he did, and he still exceeded my expectations. But let's also be serious here. Zubac was not the 9th best player this season. That's not a real thing. Jarrett Allen was not the 14th best player this season. And Brook Lopez was not the 19th best player this season. They just weren't. They just were not that valuable. So be very cautious when you're looking at valuations, when you go into your draft, you look at Yahoo and you see the rankings, and it comes up to say that all those 3 guys are top 20 players. They just weren't. They can be good still, but that is a fraudulent representation of the value they provided. So who was the guy, again, with some weighting involved based on per game numbers and production and all that sort of stuff? Who was the guy that's the biggest fraud there that would get you into the biggest trap? I'm going to go with Brook Lopez. There were times this season where Brook Lopez was like outside the top 200 in per game numbers just because like Doc would play him 27 minutes for a period. In the end, he ended up averaging 32 minutes a night. He was 106th in per game ranking for head-to-head. He was 111th in points leagues. He averaged 13 and 5. With under 2 assists and 0.6 steals. He shot 51 and 83. These are not the numbers of a top 20 player. He shot 1.7 threes. Look, fine. Below league average. Only one of these categories that is above league average in the counting stats is blocks. And then his percentages are barely above average on low volume. So, Brook Lopez gets the award. We still love Brook. He's still an unbelievably good player to do it at this age. Almost certainly will not be drafting him next season. Almost certainly. But just be very cautious about the way that those ranks get shown or get interpreted, because it's not a realistic I could do a whole show explaining why that's fraudulent. I won't right now, but I think you can get the idea that that's what I feel. We've got 2 more awards. I believe 2 more. 2 more awards to get to before we end things here. Well, we're not exactly ending things. We're just finishing the show. Today's episode is brought to you by Amazon Fire TV. Did you know that your Fire TV is also an Xbox? You can turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with the Fire TV Stick 4K devices. You don't even need your console there. You just grab a paired controller, you subscribe or you sign in to the Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to go. So instead of having to lug your Xbox around to a hotel or someone else's house, just take your Fire TV Stick and you plug it in and you're ready to go. Controller, Fire TV Stick, done, off, ready to go. And with 4K streaming, you can play the games, but you also watch more than 1.5 million movies and TV episodes from your favorite subscribed services like Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, Max, and more. So head to amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube 3rd Gen. All right. Let us go into the final couple of awards that we're going to get into here for this fantasy award show. Who would you give your best fantasy to? You can drop that in the comments down below if you want. Let's talk about the king of mid. And before you get annoyed at what this means, because you're going to look at these, oh, you're a hater. You're a hater. Before you get excited about that, what do I mean by the king of mid? And all these players have very different stories. These are the players that when I look at the categorical value across the 8 main categories, not turnovers, they're bullshit, the 8 main categories, which player was the closest to average in a standard league across all of them? Who had the lowest deviation from average? Who was the guy that every category over the course of the season, they just went average? And the three highest ranked names here are Denny Avdia. Oh, he was a first rounder of the playoffs. He was 170th for the first 3 months of the year. And in the end, that's why he's weird, because he was unbelievably good. He was bad. And overall, the numbers for the season make him the most mid player of the season, which has literally no value in terms of when we're looking forward to next season, because he wasn't really at that spot for the entirety of the season. And it's a great illustration of why season rankings and all that sort of stuff can be misleading when trying to evaluate a player. So I do have Denny in that spot with one of them. Bradley Beal is the other one. You might think that he was terrible this season. He had some moments. Absolutely. He got injured a lot. He was frustrating, but he was close to average in most categories. And the next one is Mikal Bridges, and nobody should be surprised with that. Bridges has absolutely nothing standout that he does, apart from play every game and then sit those games to maintain a streak just for the sake of maintaining a streak and not playing it. But he was very close to the average there. And again, all of these names are produced in alphabetical order, so I'm not going to give away who the winner is, not that you're sitting in huge anticipation for it, but it does go to Denny Avdia. He was the closest player. He had the smallest deviation from average across all 8 categories, which, again, is very weird considering the diurnal, that's not the right use of that word here, variation in his production. Denny ended up as the 73rd ranked player in category leagues. He was 73rd in points leagues. He averaged 33 points a game. He played 30 minutes a night. But again, second half, he was playing 37 minutes and top 10 player. And earlier on, he was playing 27 minutes and outside the top 160. He averaged 17 points. All right, 1.7 threes, 7 rebounds, 4 assists, 1 steal, half a block, 48, 78, and then 37 from 3. That is basically, when people go, what are average marks in a 12-team category league? That's it. That's basically it. So those numbers, which again, Denny was all over the shop, but those are the numbers that make you mid. And mid, I'm not using it like the kids would use it. Mid means bang in the middle. 156 players rostered in a league standard without including IR slots, meaning that 78 ranking is the midpoint. And that's sort of where he is, right in the middle. And that is totally fine. Just, it was a very weird way for him to get there. The last category that I want to get into here is the breakout player. How did I determine this? Well, I just looked at what they produced by the end of last season. I looked at what they produced at the end of this season. There was a level of weighting involved in that, because again, I don't want to be like, hey, Ty Jerome did this and then turned into this, because again, I don't know if that fully reflects the impact that a player has. So these 3 guys per game: Cade Cunningham, Tyler Hero, who's honestly, I was very skeptical of his season, and it did drop off a little bit, but he was awesome. And then Kenneth Murphy III, who was ridiculously good, and I was a little worried about how they were going to fit everybody in New Orleans, because there was too many guys there, and that problem solved itself when Ingram, Zion, Herb, DeJounte all went down, and then of course Trey went down, and we hope he's available to start next season. We just don't know. But they are my 3 finalists for the breakout player of the season, and in the end, it does go to Cade Cunningham, because Cade, while he was pretty good last season, and I was very, very bullish on him from a fantasy perspective, and I have been for many years, he took it to a new level. He became a first-round player this season. 11th in Durant head-to-head, 8th in points league, averaging 48. He had 33 usage. He played 35 minutes. He averaged 25, 6, and 9 with a steal. He averaged 0.8 blocks somehow. He shot 85 from the line. Yeah, he turned the ball over quite a bit. But again, when you are getting a lot of assists, you get a lot of turnovers. He got a lot of them, but I don't care. To me, he will almost certainly be a first-round player next season. Almost certainly. And this is something I talked about 2 years ago when looking at K's numbers and talking about, hey, who's a potential breakout guy? It didn't happen last season. I said, all you got to give him is 5 to 10% boost on his numbers, and he's a first-round guy. That's all he needed. And he did it, and he is, and I don't really see why it will stop. So he is your breakout player of the season, and you got him in round 3. You ended up with a pretty good result. And the pretty good result here is this show is over. We banged this out in 25 minutes. That is your fantasy awards. Let me know what you thought of that. Again, there was weightings for impact and higher up versus lower down, and I thought I explained all that fairly well. If I didn't, I do apologize. You can hit subscribe on the video. You can leave your comments down below. But most importantly, you can go and have a good day. Keep the positivity going. Remember that whatever it is that you did today, there was something good in it. Even if it was a failure of a day, something good happened. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.